The gunshot echoed through Rattlesnake Ridge as Clara Whitfield ducked behind the overturned wagon, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't how she'd imagined her journey west would end pinned down by bandits, while the sun blazed overhead in the merciless Montana Territory sky of 1876. "Give yourself up, lady," a gruff voice called out. "We just want the strongbox and nobody needs to get hurt." Clara's fingers tightened around her father's old revolver, 3 bullets left and at least 5 men circling. The mathematics of survival weren't in her favor. She'd come west after her father's death, determined to claim the land he'd purchased years ago. The deed was tucked safely in her bodice, but it would do her little good if she didn't live to present it to the land office in Silver Creek. A shadow fell across her hiding spot. Clara whirled, ready to fire, when a single shot rang out from somewhere behind her. The bandit who'd been approaching crumpled to the ground with a surprised expression frozen on his face. "What the?" another bandit called out, but his words were cut short by another precise shot. Confused shouting erupted as the remaining bandits scrambled for cover. 2 more shots in quick succession, and then silence fell over the prairie. Clara remained frozen, unsure if this new shooter was friend or foe. Her answer came in the form of hoofbeats approaching slowly from behind. "Madam." "You can come out now. They're gone." Clara peered cautiously over the wagon bed. A tall figure on horseback approached, silhouetted against the setting sun. As he drew closer, she could make out his features. A weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat, piercing blue eyes that assessed her with cool efficiency, and a revolver held comfortably at his side. "Are you hurt?" the stranger asked, dismounting with fluid grace. His voice was deep and carried the soft drawl of someone born in the Southern Territories. "No, I'm fine," Clara managed, standing on shaky legs. "You saved my life, thank you, Mr. Ryder Thornton." He tipped his hat slightly. "And you might want to rethink traveling these parts alone, Miss Whitfield, Clara Whitfield." She straightened her spine, unwilling to appear as rattled as she felt. "And I didn't intend to travel alone. My escort was killed yesterday by Blackfoot raiders." Something flickered across Ryder's face, surprise, perhaps even respect. "And yet you continued on." "I have business in Silver Creek that can't wait." Ryder glanced at the bodies scattered around them, then at the sky. "Well, Miss Whitfield, you won't make Silver Creek before dark, and these parts aren't safe for camping alone. My ranch is about 3 miles east. You're welcome to stay the night and continue on tomorrow." Clara hesitated. Her father had warned her about the dangers a woman faced alone in the territory's dangers that sometimes wore the face of a handsome rescuer. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Thornton, but the next bandit gang might not give you the courtesy of a warning shot," Ryder interrupted. "And I've got a housekeeper who will be mighty pleased to have another woman to talk to." Clara weighed her options quickly. He was right, the dying light made travel dangerous, and the prospect of a proper bed after days on the trail was tempting. "Very well," she agreed finally. "I accept your hospitality for the night." Ryder nodded and moved to help with her wagon. "Your wheels split. We'll need to leave the wagon and load what we can on my horse." As Clara gathered her essential belongings, she noticed Ryder checking the bodies of the fallen bandits with methodical efficiency, collecting weapons and ammunition. "You're quite the marksman," she observed. "Necessary skill out here." He didn't elaborate further. They rode double on Ryder's stallion, Clara holding her belongings in a small bundle as they traversed the rugged terrain. The silence between them was broken only by the rhythmic sound of hoofbeats and the occasional distant howl of a coyote. "Have you lived in the territory long?" Clara finally asked, trying to distract herself from the unfamiliar intimacy of riding pressed against a stranger's back. 10 years. Came out after the war. Confederate," she ventured. "Union cavalry, when it ended, didn't much feel like going back east." Clara nodded, though he couldn't see her. "My father fought as well. He never spoke of it, but I think that's why he bought land out here, to get as far from those memories as possible." Ryder made a sound of acknowledgement but offered no further conversation. As they crested a hill, Clara gasped involuntarily. Below them stretched a valley bathed in the golden light of sunset. A modest ranch house stood near a stream with corrals, a barn, and several outbuildings arranged neatly around it. Cattle grazed in the distance and smoke curled invitingly from the chimney. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It's home," Ryder replied simply, but there was undeniable pride in his voice. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Her gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, but her face broke into a smile when she spotted them. "Mr. Thornton, I was beginning to worry." She stopped short when she noticed Clara. "Oh, we have company." Miss Whitfield was beset by Halsey's gang, Ryder explained as he dismounted and helped Clara down. "She'll be staying the night before continuing to Silver Creek tomorrow." "Halsey," the woman's face darkened. "Those no good," she caught herself and offered Clara a warm smile instead. "I'm Mrs. Abernathy, dear. Come inside and get yourself cleaned up. Dinner's nearly ready." Clara followed Mrs. Abernathy into the surprisingly comfortable ranch house while Ryder took care of his horse. The interior was simply furnished but clean and orderly, with a few touches that spoke of a woman's influence, likely Mrs. Abernathy's. "The washroom's through there," Mrs. Abernathy pointed. "I'll find you something clean to wear. You look to be about my daughter's size, God rest her soul." Clara thanked her and gratefully used the opportunity to wash away the dust and fear of the day. When she emerged in a borrowed dress, she found Ryder seated at the table, freshly washed as well, his hair still damp at the temples. Dinner was a simple but hearty affair of venison stew, cornbread, and coffee. Mrs. Abernathy carried most of the conversation, sharing local gossip and asking polite questions about Clara's journey. "So you've come to claim your father's land?" Mrs. Abernathy asked as she poured more coffee. Clara nodded. "He purchased it 5 years ago but never had the chance to settle it. Now that he's gone, I intend to honor his dream." "Alone?" Ryder's question held no judgment, merely curiosity. "I have enough saved to hire help for building and planting," Clara replied. "And I grew up on a farm. I know what I'm doing." "Knowing and doing are different matters out here," Ryder said quietly. "This territory doesn't forgive mistakes." "I'm aware of the challenges," Clara said, lifting her chin slightly. "But I have nowhere else to go, and my father believed in this land." Ryder studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slightly as if coming to some private conclusion. After dinner, Mrs. Abernathy showed Clara to a small but comfortable bedroom and bid her good night. Exhaustion from the day's events quickly pulled Clara towards sleep, but before she drifted off, she heard voices from the main room. "Could be Blackwood land," Mrs. Abernathy was saying. "If it is, she's riding into trouble." That was Ryder's voice, lower and more concerned. "You could warn her." "And say what?" "That she might be holding a deed to land that a man like Richard Blackwood won't give up without blood. She's determined, Martha." "Like someone else I know," Mrs. Abernathy replied with a hint of amusement. Their voices faded as Clara succumbed to sleep. Morning came with the scent of coffee and bacon. Clara dressed quickly and joined the others for breakfast. Ryder was already in his work clothes, looking as if he'd been up for hours. "I've decided to ride with you to Silver Creek," he announced without preamble. Clara paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "That's not necessary. It is if you want to reach town alive." His tone brooked no argument. "Besides, I need supplies." Clara considered protesting but thought better of it. The memory of yesterday's attack was still fresh. "Very well. I appreciate the escort." They set out an hour later, Clara riding a gentle mare Ryder had provided. The journey to Silver Creek would take most of the day, giving them ample time to talk, though Ryder didn't seem inclined to conversation. "You mentioned Blackwood last night," Clara finally said, after they'd been riding in silence for nearly an hour. "Is he someone I should know about?" Ryder's expression tightened. "Richard Blackwood controls most of the territory between my ranch and Silver Creek. He's not the kind of man who respects paper deeds if they interfere with what he wants. And you think my father's land might be within what he considers his territory? Depends on where it is." Clara pulled out the deed from her satchel and showed him the description. Ryder's face grew grim as he read it. "Your father bought Cottonwood Valley." It wasn't a question. "That's prime grazing land that Blackwood's been using for years. He's not going to give it up easy." Clara's stomach nodded, but she kept her voice steady. "It's legally mine." Law's a flexible concept out here, Miss Whitfield. It bends toward whoever has the most guns. And what would you suggest? That I simply abandon my claim? Ryder handed the deed back to her. I suggest you understand what you're walking into. Blackwood has the sheriff in his pocket and enough hired guns to wage a small war. They rode in silence for another mile before Clara spoke again. Why are you helping me, Mr. Thornton? You could have left me to the bandits yesterday. Ryder's gaze remained fixed on the trail ahead. I've seen enough people die in my lifetime. The locals seem afraid of you, she observed. Mrs. Abernathy mentioned that people in Silver Creek cross the street when they see you coming. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I keep to myself. Out here, that makes a man suspect. Is that all? Ryder sighed. During the war, I served in a cavalry unit that specialized in difficult situations. Afterward, I brought those skills west. There was a time when I hired out my gun to whoever paid. I earned a reputation. As a killer, Clara said quietly. As someone who finishes what he starts. Ryder finally looked at her. I've been trying to leave that life behind. The ranch helps. Clara studied his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the watchful eyes that constantly scanned their surroundings. He was dangerous, certainly, but she didn't fear him. There was something in the careful way he treated her, in his quiet competence, that inspired trust rather than fear. Everyone deserves a second chance, she said softly. He gave her a sidelong glance that held surprise, and something else she couldn't quite name. As they approached Silver Creek in the late afternoon, the small frontier town came into view. A single main street lined with wooden buildings, saloons outnumbering proper businesses, and the inevitable church standing sentinel at one end. We'll get you settled at the hotel, Ryder said as they rode in. The land office closes at 5, so you'll need to wait until tomorrow to file your claim. Clara nodded, suddenly nervous about what awaited her. The town seemed unwelcoming, with dusty-faced men eyeing them as they rode down the main street. They hadn't reached the hotel when a group of riders emerged from the largest saloon, blocking their path. The leader, a tall man with a silver-streaked beard and expensive clothes, stared at them with undisguised hostility. Thornton, he called out. Funny seeing you in town. Thought you'd learn to keep to your side of the creek. Blackwood, Ryder replied evenly. Just escorting the lady to town. We'll be on our way. Blackwood's eyes shifted to Clara, assessing her with a cold gaze that made her skin crawl. And who might this be? Before Ryder could respond, Clara straightened in her saddle. Clara Whitfield, sir. My father was Jonathan Whitfield. Something flashed in Blackwood's eyes, recognition, then calculation. Whitfield, eh? I knew a Whitfield once. Sold him some worthless paper for good money. He laughed, a harsh sound without humor. If you're here about that land deed, you might as well head back east, girl. That land's mine. Clara felt her cheeks flush with anger. The deed is legal and properly filed. My father paid fair price for that land. Your father was a fool who bought land I'd already claimed by right of use, Blackwood said dismissively. The law out here respects possession more than paper. The law respects legitimate ownership, Clara countered. Blackwood's expression darkened. You do well to watch your tongue, Miss Whitfield. Women who speak out of turn tend to find trouble in these parts. Ryder moved his horse slightly forward, positioning himself between Clara and Blackwood. We're just passing through, Richard. No need for unpleasantness. Attaching yourself to another lost cause, Thornton, Blackwood sneered. Everyone knows what happens to folks who cross me. And everyone knows what happens to folks who cross me, Ryder replied, his voice deceptively soft. So I suggest we all just continue about our business. Tension stretched between them like a taut wire ready to snap. Clara held her breath, acutely aware of the hands hovering near guns on both sides. Finally, Blackwood jerked his head in a signal to his men. This isn't finished. He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following like shadows. Clara released her breath slowly. That's Richard Blackwood, in all his glory, Ryder confirmed grimly. And now he knows who you are and why you're here. Will he really try to stop me claiming my land? He'll do more than try. Ryder guided his horse toward the hotel. Blackwood doesn't threaten, he promises. At the hotel, Ryder secured 2 rooms, one for Clara and one for himself. I'll stay in town tonight, he explained. After that encounter, Blackwood's men might decide to pay you a visit. You don't have to, I do. His tone left no room for argument. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. Clara tried to sleep that night, but anxiety kept her awake. She'd expected difficulties in claiming her father's land, but not outright hostility and threats. The West was proving to be even more dangerous than her father had warned. Morning brought no relief from her worries. Ryder met her for breakfast in the hotel dining room, his expression grim. Blackwood's men have been asking about you, he said without preamble. Word is he's offering $500 to anyone who can prove your deed is fraudulent. It's not, Clara insisted. My father purchased that land legally. I believe you, but money has a way of creating evidence when needed. After breakfast, they headed to the land office. The clerk, a nervous man with ink-stained fingers, examined Clara's deed with suspicious thoroughness. Everything appears in order, he finally admitted reluctantly. But there's a complication. Mr. Blackwood has filed a competing claim based on prior use and improvement of the land. That's ridiculous, Clara protested. The deed clearly states the matter will have to go before the territorial judge, the clerk interrupted. He won't be through these parts for another month. A month, Clara couldn't hide her dismay. I don't have resources to wait that long. Not my problem, miss, the clerk shrugged. Until then, neither party can legally occupy the disputed property. Outside the office, Clara fought back tears of frustration. This is blatant manipulation. Blackwood knows I can't afford to wait a month in town. Ryder's expression was thoughtful. You could return to my ranch until the judge arrives. The offer surprised her. I couldn't impose, it's not an imposition. I have the space, and Mrs. Abernathy would welcome the company. Clara hesitated. Staying at a single man's ranch for a month would certainly raise eyebrows, but her alternatives were few. She could either return east defeated or spend what little money she had left on a hotel room. Thank you, she finally said. I accept your offer. They were preparing to leave town when Sheriff Dawson approached them. A heavyset man with small, calculating eyes, he carried himself with the swagger of someone used to wielding power. Miss Whitfield, he called out. I understand you're making trouble about Cottonwood Valley. I'm claiming what legally belongs to me, Clara replied evenly. The sheriff's gaze flicked to Ryder. Interesting company you're keeping. Did you know they call him the Savage of Shiloh back east? Killed more men during the war than most soldiers see in a lifetime, and he didn't stop when the fighting ended. Clara felt Ryder tense beside her, but kept her expression neutral. Mr. Thornton has shown me nothing but kindness and respect. Has he now? The sheriff smirked. Well, just a friendly warning. Blackwood doesn't take kindly to people challenging his authority, and neither do I. He tipped his hat mockingly and sauntered away. Clara glanced at Ryder, whose face had gone hard as stone. The Savage of Shiloh, old stories, he muttered. Let's go. They rode in silence for the first hour of their journey back to Ryder's ranch. Clara sensed there was more to his story than he'd shared, but she respected his reticence. Everyone had parts of their past they preferred to keep buried. Is it true? She finally asked as they stopped to rest the horses at a small stream. What they call you? Ryder stared into the distance. During the war, my unit was sent behind enemy lines. Things happened that weren't honorable. We did what was necessary to win. He looked at her directly. After the war, I carried that savagery west with me. For years, I took jobs that required a certain disregard for human life. What changed? A shadow crossed his face. 3 years ago, I was hired to clear some homesteaders from land a cattle baron wanted. I didn't ask questions, I just did the job. His voice grew tight. There was a family, parents and 2 children. I told them to leave. The father refused. Clara's heart clenched, dreading what came next. I burned them out, Ryder continued, his voice hollow. Was supposed to be empty when I set the fire. Wasn't. He swallowed hard. The youngest child was still inside, a girl maybe 6 years old. Oh, Ryder, Clara whispered, instinctively reaching for his hand. He allowed the touch briefly before withdrawing. I quit that day. Bought land as far from people as I could find. Told myself I'd never raise a gun against another human being. His laugh was bitter. Yet here I am, riding into another man's war, my war, Clara said softly. Why, you owe me nothing. Ryder met her gaze, and the intensity there made her breath catch. Maybe I'm trying to balance the scales. They completed the journey to Ryder's ranch in companionable silence. Over the following days, Clara fell into the rhythm of ranch life. She helped Mrs. Abernathy with household tasks, learned about cattle from Ryder's ranch hands, and spent evenings on the porch watching the sunset. Ryder proved to be a different man on his own land, more relaxed, occasionally even smiling at Clara's attempts to master various ranch skills. She discovered he was well-read, with a small but carefully curated collection of books ranging from classical philosophy to modern novels. 2 weeks into her stay, Clara was helping repair a fence when Ryder rode up with news from town. "Blackwood's men have been asking questions about you," he said without preamble. "They know you're staying here. Does that concern you?" Clara asked, setting down her tools. "It concerns me that they're interested enough to keep asking." Ryder dismounted. "Blackwood's not the type to wait for legal proceedings if he thinks he can solve a problem more directly." That evening, Clara found Ryder cleaning his rifles on the porch. She sat beside him, watching his methodical movements. What will happen if Blackwood decides not to wait for the judge? She asked. "He'll send men," Ryder replied matter-of-factly, "first to intimidate, then to eliminate the problem." "Me," Clara said quietly. "I'm the problem." Ryder set down the rifle and looked at her directly. "You should consider selling the deed to someone else. Take the money and start somewhere new." "Is that what you think I should do? Give up? I think you should live." His voice was tight with an emotion Clara couldn't quite identify. "This land isn't worth your life." "It's all I have left of my father," Clara insisted. "And it's more than just land, it's the future he wanted for me, a place of my own." Ryder's expression softened. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "Is that a compliment or a complaint?" Clara asked with a small smile. "Both." He returned to cleaning his rifle. "If you're staying to fight, then so am I." The words hung between them, laden with meaning Clara wasn't ready to examine too closely. But that night, as she lay in bed listening to the distant howl of coyotes, she acknowledged the truth to herself. She was falling in love with Ryder Thornton. 3 days later, their fragile peace was shattered. Clara was gathering eggs in the henhouse when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. She emerged to see Ryder rushing toward her, his face grim. "Ryder's coming," he said tersely. "Get to the house." Clara hurried inside where Mrs. Abernathy was already loading shotguns. "Blackwood's men?" she asked. The housekeeper nodded grimly. "Most likely. I counted 8 riders approaching from the east ridge." Through the window, Clara watched Ryder positioning his 4 ranch hands strategically around the property. He moved with the confidence of someone who had done this before planned defenses, prepared for violence. The riders appeared at the edge of the property, slowing to a deliberate walk as they approached. Clara recognized Sheriff Dawson at the lead, with 7 armed men behind him. "Thornton." The sheriff called out, "We've come for the Whitfield woman." Ryder stood his ground on the porch, rifle in hand but not raised. "What business do you have with Miss Whitfield, Sheriff?" "She's wanted for questioning regarding fraudulent land documents," Dawson replied. "Come peacefully, miss, and there won't be any trouble." "There's nothing fraudulent about my claim," Clara called back, stepping onto the porch despite Ryder's warning glance. The sheriff sneered. "Judge Wilkes seems to think otherwise. He's issued a warrant for your arrest pending investigation." "Judge Wilkes isn't due in the territory for another 2 weeks, Ryder said evenly. "Strange how he's issuing warrants from afar." "Are you obstructing justice, Thornton?" Dawson's hand hovered near his holster. "I'm questioning its application." Ryder's voice remained calm, but Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. "Show me the warrant," the sheriff spat in the dirt. "Don't need to show you anything. Step aside or we'll consider you in violation of the law as well." Clara placed a hand on Ryder's arm. "I don't want bloodshed on my account. This isn't about the law," Ryder said quietly, for her ears only. "If you go with them, you won't make it to town alive." "Then what do we do?" she whispered back. Ryder's blue eyes met hers, fierce with determination. "We stand our ground." He raised his voice to address the sheriff again. "Miss Whitfield isn't going anywhere today. If Judge Wilkes wants to question her, he can come here himself with proper documentation." The sheriff's face darkened with anger. "This is your last warning, Thornton." Hand over the woman, or we take her by force. Clara felt her heart pounding as the moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then, surprisingly, Mrs. Abernathy stepped forward, a rolled document in her hand. "Perhaps this might interest you, Sheriff," she called out, waving the paper. "A telegram from the territorial governor responding to our inquiry about Miss Whitfield's claim. Seems he's quite interested in allegations of land fraud perpetrated by certain influential citizens." The sheriff's expression flickered with uncertainty. "What telegram?" "The one Mr. Thornton sent last week," Mrs. Abernathy replied smoothly. "The governor's response arrived yesterday. He's sending a federal marshal to investigate the situation personally." Clara glanced at Ryder in confusion. She knew of no such telegram. His slight shake of the head confirmed her suspicion. This was a bluff, but it was working. The sheriff and his men exchanged uneasy looks. No one wanted federal attention, especially men operating on the wrong side of the law. "Let me see that telegram," the sheriff demanded. "By all means, Mrs. Abernathy replied, "Come up alone and unarmed, and I'll be happy to share it." The standoff stretched for several tense moments before the sheriff jerked his horse around. "This isn't over, Thornton, not by a long shot." He signaled to his men, and they retreated down the road, throwing dark glances over their shoulders. When they were out of sight, Clara released the breath she'd been holding. "That was quick thinking, Mrs. Abernathy." The housekeeper smiled grimly. "Shopping list." "But they don't need to know that." Ryder's expression remained troubled. "They'll be back, and next time they won't announce themselves with a conversation." That night, after Mrs. Abernathy had retired, Clara found Ryder on the porch, staring into the darkness. She sat beside him, drawing her shawl tighter against the evening chill. "You should leave at first light," he said without looking at her. "Take the North Trail to Helena. I have a friend there who can help you establish a new identity." "Run away, you mean," Clara said softly. "Live," Ryder corrected. "This land dispute isn't worth dying for." "And what about you? If I leave, Blackwood will still come after you for defying him." Ryder shrugged. "I can take care of myself." "That's not the point." Clara turned to face him fully. "I won't run and leave you to face the consequences of helping me." "Damn it, Clara," Ryder said, his composure finally cracking. "I'm trying to protect you. I never asked for your protection." "No, but you have it all the same." His voice softened as he finally met her gaze. "Whether you want it or not." Something in his expression made Clara's heart skip. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk everything for me?" Ryder reached out slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Because in all my life, I've never met anyone like you. So determined, so fearless." His hand lingered on her cheek. "You make me want to be better than I am." Clara leaned into his touch. "I think you're already better than you believe." He shook his head slightly. "You don't know the things I've done." "I know the man you are now," she countered. "And that's what matters to me." The distance between them seemed to shrink, the night air charged with unspoken feelings. When Ryder finally leaned forward and kissed her, it felt inevitable, like the natural conclusion to a story that had been writing itself since that first day on the trail. His lips were gentle against hers, the kiss tentative at first, then deepening as Clara responded. When they finally parted, she remained in the circle of his arms, her head resting against his chest. "They say you're savage," she whispered, echoing the sheriff's words. Ryder smiled down at her, a genuine smile that transformed his face. "Then let me be savage too," he murmured, "but only to protect what matters." Clara understood then that he meant her. She mattered to him, perhaps more than anything had in a very long time. The peaceful moment was shattered by a distant crack, unmistakably a rifle shot followed by shouts from the direction of the bunkhouse. "Get inside," Ryder ordered, immediately alert. He drew his revolver and moved toward the steps. Clara grabbed his arm. "Not without you." "Clara, please." A volley of shots interrupted him, splintering the wood of the porch railing. Ryder pulled Clara down behind a barrel as bullets thudded into the house. "Thornton," a voice called from the darkness. "Send out the woman and we'll let you live." "Blackwood," Ryder muttered. He came himself this time. Clara's mind raced. The ranch hands would be pinned down in the bunkhouse. Mrs. Abernathy was inside, hopefully safe for the moment, but they were outnumbered and surrounded. "There's a tunnel," Ryder whispered urgently. "From the root cellar to the creek bed, Mrs." Abernathy knows. Get to her and get out. I'll cover you. I'm not leaving you, Clara insisted. This isn't a debate, Ryder hissed. I can't fight them and worry about you at the same time. Another volley of shots hit the house. Clara heard Mrs. Abernathy cry out inside. Go to her, Ryder urged. Please, Clara, if not for yourself, then for her. The plea in his eyes broke through her resistance. Clara nodded and, staying low, made her way to the door. Just before entering, she looked back at Ryder. I love you, she said simply. Don't you dare die out here. Something fierce and tender flashed in his eyes. I love you too, now go. Inside, Clara found Mrs. Abernathy nursing a graze on her arm. We need to get to the root cellar, Clara explained quickly. Ryder said there's a tunnel. The older woman nodded grimly. Help me move the pantry shelf. Together they revealed a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug. The sounds of gunfire outside intensified as they descended into the dark cellar. What about Ryder? Mrs. Abernathy asked as she lit a lantern. He's buying us time, Clara replied, her voice tight with worry. But I'm not leaving without him. The housekeeper gave her a shrewd look. There's a second entrance to the tunnel from the barn. If we hurry, we might be able to circle behind Blackwood's men. They moved quickly through the narrow earthen tunnel, emerging some 10 minutes later into a dry creek bed sheltered by cottonwood trees. From there, they made their way cautiously toward the barn, guided by the sounds of ongoing gunfire. At the barn's hidden entrance, Mrs. Abernathy pressed a revolver into Clara's hand. I'm too old for heroics, she said firmly, but you might need this. Clara took the weapon, praying she wouldn't have to use it. Inside the barn, they could see through cracks in the wall that Blackwood's men had surrounded the house, firing from multiple positions. Ryder was nowhere to be seen, but occasional shots from the house indicated he was still fighting. There's Blackwood, Mrs. Abernathy whispered, pointing to a figure directing men from behind a water trough. Clara studied the situation, an idea forming. If she could somehow get to Blackwood himself. A sudden cry and commotion drew their attention. Two of Blackwood's men were dragging someone from the side of the house. Ryder, bleeding from what appeared to be a shoulder wound. They forced him to his knees in front of Blackwood. Where is she, Thornton? Blackwood demanded, his voice carrying in the night air. Gone, Ryder answered defiantly. Far beyond your reach by now, Blackwood backhanded him across the face. I don't believe you. Believe what you want. Ryder spat blood onto the ground. You've lost, Blackwood. The governor knows about your land schemes. It's over. Blackwood drew his pistol and pressed it to Ryder's forehead. Then I have nothing to lose by killing you. Clara moved without conscious thought, slipping out the barn door and circling behind the men. Everyone's attention was focused on the confrontation between Blackwood and Ryder. With the revolver steady in her hand, Clara approached until she stood just yards behind Blackwood. Drop your weapon, she commanded, her voice stronger than she felt. Blackwood froze, then slowly turned to face her, keeping his gun pressed to Ryder's head. Miss Whitfield, how convenient. Let him go, Clara insisted. This is between you and me. Clara, get out of here, Ryder urged, earning himself another blow from one of Blackwood's men. Blackwood smiled coldly. Put down the gun, girl, you don't have the stomach to use it. You're wrong, Clara replied evenly. I have everything to lose. That makes me dangerous. Something in her tone must have convinced him because Blackwood's smile faltered. What do you propose? A deal. The deed to Cottonwood Valley for Ryder's life and your word to leave us both alone. Clara, no. Ryder struggled against his captors. Blackwood considered her offer. The deed. Now. Release him first, Clara countered. A tense standoff ensued, broken suddenly by the distant sound of multiple riders approaching fast. Blackwood's men looked to their boss nervously. Boss, that sounds like more than just a few riders, one said urgently. Into this moment of uncertainty rode a group of uniformed men, territorial marshals, led by a stern-faced officer. Richard Blackwood, the lead marshal called out. You and your men are under arrest for attempted murder, land fraud, and obstruction of justice. Chaos erupted as Blackwood's men scattered. In the confusion, Ryder broke free from his captors and launched himself at Blackwood, tackling him to the ground. The gun went off, the bullet striking the dirt harmlessly. Clara rushed forward as marshals surrounded them, disarming Blackwood and hauling him to his feet. "Are you hurt?" she asked Ryder, helping him stand. "Nothing serious," he assured her, though blood soaked his shirt. "How did the marshals know to come?" The lead marshal approached them. "We received an urgent telegram from a Mrs. Martha Abernathy 3 days ago, detailing serious allegations against Richard Blackwood and Sheriff Dawson." He tipped his hat to Mrs. Abernathy, who had emerged from the barn. "Quite detailed in her accusations, too." Clara turned to the housekeeper in astonishment. "You actually sent a telegram?" Mrs. Abernathy smiled smugly. "I may have embellished a bit about the governor's direct involvement, but the rest was true enough. Figured we might need real help, not just a bluff." As the marshals secured Blackwood and rounded up his men, Clara helped Ryder to the house to tend his wounds. The shoulder injury was painful but not life-threatening, and he had various cuts and bruises from the fight. "You should have run when you had the chance," he chided as she cleaned a cut on his forehead. "And miss all this excitement," Clara replied with forced lightness, though her hands trembled slightly. "Besides, someone once told me that everyone deserves a second chance." Ryder caught her hand in his. "I thought I'd lost you when I saw you standing there with a gun on Blackwood. I thought I'd lost you when they dragged you out of the house," she countered softly. He pulled her down to sit beside him on the bed. "I meant what I said out there." "I love you, Clara Whitfield. Never thought I'd say those words to anyone, but there they are." Clara leaned forward and kissed him gently. "And I love you, Ryder Thornton, savage reputation and all." 1 month later, Clara stood on the ridge overlooking Cottonwood Valley, her valley now without dispute. With Blackwood and Sheriff Dawson facing trial for their crimes, the land office had quickly confirmed her claim and offered apologies for the misunderstanding. Strong arms encircled her from behind as Ryder joined her in admiring the view. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Not one," Clara replied, leaning back against him, "though I'm thinking we might need a bigger house if we're going to combine our lands." The wedding 2 days earlier had been simple, just a ceremony in Silver Creek's small church with Mrs. Abernathy and the ranch hands as witnesses. The town had turned out in surprising numbers, many curious to see the woman who had tamed the savage of Shiloh and helped bring down Richard Blackwood's empire of intimidation. "We could build right here," Ryder suggested, indicating the ridge. "Best view in the territory." Clara turned in his arms. "As long as we're together, I don't care where we live." Ryder's smile, once so rare, now becoming wonderfully familiar, warmed his entire face. Who would have thought that getting ambushed by bandits would lead to this? "I'm starting to think my father knew exactly what he was doing when he bought this land," Clara mused. "He always said the right piece of earth finds its rightful owner eventually." As the sun began to set over their combined lands, painting the valley in gold and crimson, Ryder kissed her with a tenderness that still surprised them both. The man others called savage had found his peace at last, and Clara had found her home not just in the land her father had left her, but in the arms of the man who had risked everything to help her claim it. "Savage or not," Clara whispered against his lips, "you're mine now." "And you're mine," Ryder replied. "That's all that matters." Together they watched darkness fall over the valley, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them as they had faced Blackwood, standing side by side, savage in defense of what they loved.